Yo, welcome back everybody to a brand new video here on the second channel, and we're going to look at every single deck that got day 2 at Brisbane and Gdańsk regionals. Now, I know these regionals were both like last weekend, so it's kind of old news now, but I did want to look at all the day 2 decks. It did take a while for the day 2 decks to come out on Limitless, and I did want to take a look at all of them, because I do think there are some cool decks. There's actually a really interesting deck that got day 2 at Brisbane, and I wanted to see what else did get day 2, because obviously we did see what got top 8. We saw some pretty crazy creations, but I also wanted to see what ended up just getting day 2 in general, what decks were people playing, what techs were they playing, and what ended up performing well. Because obviously with San Antonio on the horizon, I did want to get a bit more insight into our meta by seeing what else got day 2 at these two regionals, especially with the meta that they both had. So if y'all are excited for the video, leave a like, and I'll leave a link to a Limitless down below if you want to go check out these lists yourself, maybe copy them, put them on live, play them a bit, whatever the case may be. Leave a link down below to it. And if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe down below. We're on the road to 10,000 subs. So let's take a look at the deck list. So we've already seen at the top 8. I went over the top 8 decks already in Gdańsk, but we can look at what else got day 2. So 9th place, we actually see Yuho here getting 9th place with the Mewtwo deck. It looks like he played basically the same 60 to what he played at LEIC, so almost getting top 8 again after LEIC is pretty impressive. So yeah, Mewtwo still doing well. Obviously, we didn't see a Mewtwo in top 8 in either of these tournaments, but we almost saw one in Gdańsk. There was actually a Roaring Moon deck here. So we all know Roaring Moon has basically flopped. It hasn't been performing well. It hasn't had the results yet, but there is a Roaring Moon that almost got top 8 in Gdańsk. And Gdańsk was the bigger of the two regionals, so this is a little bit more valuable to kind of input. And it is actually the Turbo Roaring Moon with the water energy, nothing too crazy and special. I've seen a lot of people teching out their Roaring Moon decks. But this is just keeping it very straightforward and simple. And the deck did get far enough to almost get top 8 at the Gdańsk regionals. I think Roaring Moon is still a solid deck. I don't think it's a bad deck or anything. Like, it's definitely not top tier. I don't think it's one of the best decks in the format. It's not even a deck you really have to, respect right now. But Roaring Moon definitely is still a fine archetype. It reminds me a little bit of, like, I don't know, like Rapid Strike, like a deck that like exists, can still do well. But people just don't really take into account right now. And yeah, that is one of Roaring Moon's first highest placement so far in this format. There is another Rapid Strike deck here outside of the top 8, as we see Rapid Strike doing a Rapid Strike thing. Still a very strong deck. Could even be better, right, than Entei Valiant right now. We do see Rahul got 11th with the deck. We see a Fusion Mew deck here. Now, this one does play the Deoxys in the deck over the Ice Cube, which I'm a fan of. I actually like the 60 quite a bit. The Double Town Store is decent because it's nice to have outs to Forest Seal Stone, especially when you want to try to counter the Spiritombs that might exist, because you want to make sure you're getting the Sparkles into play. Having the extra Stadium Bump does help you against Path. The Double Judge is really good. I'm a big fan of this deck. I'm not sure the Deoxys is as good as something like the Ice Cube. I think Ice Cube is actually still pretty decent overall, but Deoxys isn't a bad card either. It's a really nice attacker for a 1-prizer. So we do see another Snorlax stall deck here in top 16. Snorlax was very popular at this tournament. The deck does play Radiant Serena, which is actually a pretty funny counter to like Minior. Specifically, you just go Mimikyu when they go Minior, and then you just like Serena heal. It's pretty funny. And it also helps against like Sableye and stuff, like any niche spread attack. Got another Charizard deck here, looking like it is the Entei Pidgeysard build. Actually playing a bit greedy, only playing a 1/1 Pidgeot, but does have that Mew EX in the deck, which is a card that Charizard can play. It's not the worst card you can play in Charizard. It's got a pseudo draw engine. It can be powered up with Charizard, so you can actually attack with it. It's an interesting list. It did get top 16. I'm still a fan of the Entei Charizard package. I know like Rotom was the better performing one and is now kind of the most popular way to play Charizard Pidgey is with Rotom, but I still think Entei is still fine. It's a great backup attacker. It's a solid lead. It can help in a lot of matchups like Giratina, where you need like a good beat stick early on. We do still have a Valiant Entei deck in top 16. While the deck definitely has not really had the performance that it got at LEIC recently, it's still a fine deck, and it did still get top 16 because the deck is still strong. It does a lot of stuff. It can easily donk your opponent. Entei Valiant is still just a strong archetype, right? It's, I guess, Orange Miraidon, if you want to call it that. Well, it's not really Orange Miraidon, but it does have similar traits. There's 3 Mews in a row. Again, Europe loves their Mew. We do see the Grabber build of Mew with the one of Luxray, which we saw before, I think in Pittsburgh, right, where the Luxray can be really good against like Charizard and stuff. Colress, getting rid of Colress is huge. Yeah, definitely still a strong Mew deck. I don't know if Double Turbo Mew is as good right now, mainly because Spiritomb is starting to pop up a little bit more frequently than I would like. So I still think Fusion Mew is maybe better overall, but Double Turbo Grabber Mew is still very strong if you're not playing against Spirit Tomb, right? So it's still a good deck. Looks like there was like 3 Double Turbo Mews in a row. We're going to quickly, I guess, like skim through these real quick. Yeah, there's 3 Double Turbo Mews in a row. Another Snorlax here in top 32. Again, just a very popular deck in Gdansk. We see another Fusion Mew. So this build, yeah, it's a little bit more straightforward. It just playing Avery over the Double Judge or anything, which Avery's not a terrible card to play in Mew. It's actually good against Gardevoir, right? It does help a lot against Guardy. It can be pretty good against Mirror Match. Yeah, I think it's not a terrible card to play in Mew. I wouldn't justify it, though, over like playing like the Hand Disruption package, because a lot of the time with Mew, you're either going Boss, specifically in the Fusion case, you're Sparkling, Bossing, or Judging. And I don't know if you're ever able to use Avery. Like, I guess like if you Judge Gardevoir and they brick, then you Avery them, but at that point you want to be Bossing their Curlias. But I guess, I don't know, maybe it's okay to play Avery. I mean, Avery's not a terrible card, to be honest. Avery Ice Cube could also be a nice little like combo, kind of like a mini Screamtail package, I guess, like with Gardevoir. Speaking of Screamtail, we got another Guardy here with the double Avery and Screamtail. Another Guardy deck here. Looks like it is another Guardy build with the Screamtail and the Zacian. Only 1 Avery, though. But does play that Luxurious Cape and the Zacian, so kind of double 1 KO stuff. There is a Lost Zone Radiant Charizard Roaring Moon deck here that did well. This deck, I think, is actually underrated. I'm a big fan of the Lost Zone Charizard deck, but Roaring Moon definitely does upgrade the deck a little bit. It does add a little bit more value. It gives you a nice backup attacker. It helps in some of your trickier matchups, and it just gives you a bigger answer to like even Iron Hands, which is good. Sometimes you can't get there with Charizard, and I do like the idea of Roaring Moon in the Lost Zone Charizard deck. I mean, Lost Zone Roaring Moon obviously is just good right now. I mean, we did see it also did get top 8 with Tord's like crazy Lost Zone deck, but yeah, I'm still a fan of this archetype. I definitely want to tweak and test it a little bit. I think it is pretty good. But yeah, the Roaring Moon definitely does offer a lot of value to a deck like that. There was another Fusion Mew here, once again proving that Fusion Mew is good. Once again, though, playing the Deoxys. Actually, looks like it's the same 60 one we saw earlier with like the Double Town Store. Another Mew, of course, it was another Luxray Double Turbo Mew, playing the Luxray technology. And we, surprisingly enough, got an Urshifu Valiant deck. So this was originally the way everyone tried Valiant when it came out, right? Everyone was on the Urshifu build. It's Urshifu Valiant. Looked like it was a good deck, right? Urshifu logically is good with Valiant because you can use more Yoga Loops. Rapid Flow is really good with tagging on bits. You get a fighting Pokemon, which is really good against the popularity of like Miraidon. It seemed like it was the way to go, but the deck just flopped and never really took off. But somebody did get day 2 with it, actually getting top 32 with it at Gdańsk, which is pretty impressive. Considering everyone's kind of written this deck off by now, I think everyone is in agreement that Entei Valiant is the best way to play Valiant. And obviously, there's been other Valiant decks like Palkia Valiant, but Urshifu Valiant still is like not terrible. Like, I don't think it's the worst deck. And honestly, coming off of the pretty good win that Miraidon had in LAIC, it's not a terrible play because it does counter the deck pretty hard. It can beat Miraidon pretty easily when you have the Urshifu and stuff, right? So it's not the worst deck, and I guess it's not terrible into Guardy. If you're able to just constantly destroy them before they can set up, like the deck just probably destroys Guardy too, right? So a couple more Snorlax here. We'll like skim through these. It's probably just like similar 60s, yeah. Snorlax proven that it is a top tier deck, especially with the popularity of Charizard. Another Entei Valiant deck here. Valiant having a bit of a decent performance. I mean, a couple in top 32, and another Entei Valiant here to look at, doing good in the tournament, proving that it's still not terrible. There was a Charizard Delphox Bibarel deck here in day 2 also. So the Bibarel deck has been, falling off a little bit. I don't think it's still bad. Like, I think it's not terrible. It does have still that awkward matchup against something like Snorlax. And that's something you just kind of have to accept if you're playing Charizard. You just have a bad Snorlax matchup. The Delphox V is cool, though, because you're able to catch people off guard. You can take a game with Delphox, so they won't bench Mana Fee, then you can Delphox them, take 2 prizes, and all the time just swing the prize trade in your favor. It's probably really good against Gardevoir, because they're not going to see it coming, right? You can take an early 2-prize cheese lead into Guardy, which is actually huge. I think Delphox actually could be a good card, maybe in, like, best of 1, because, like, in a regional, like, going into game 2, they'll be like, okay, I'm going to bench Mana Fee now, and then my Delphox is useless. So there is, like, the debate where that's going to end up mattering, but I definitely like the idea of Delphox and Charizard. Another Guardy here in top 32. We'll skim through that. There was actually a Lost Zone Gudra in top 32. This is a deck that definitely has fallen off a little bit since the Obsidian Flames format. And I think that's mainly because Gudra will struggle into some decks, though I actually don't think it's terrible right now. It doesn't probably have a bad matchup into Snorlax. It's probably okay into Guardy, even though I guess the big issue is maybe like the Jirachi is now like popular. But Gudra could still be good against Gardevoir. it still seems like okay. Like, it probably isn't bad into, like, Entei Iron Valiant either. Like, I actually don't think Gudra is, like, a bad deck. I just think that people are just not playing it. Maybe we'll see a breakthrough for Gudra. It did get top 32, so the deck still has its good runs. I don't really know what its worst matchup is. Like, I guess maybe Guardy's, like, a little tricky overall, just because Gardevoir just has, like, big Pokemon that can KO you in one hit, which is kind of annoying. I don't hate Gudra. I think it's honestly not the worst deck. I think maybe over Drapion, I think Spiritomb might just be better right now because of, like, it helps a little bit more to Snorlax. But yeah, I definitely think Gudra could be decent. So seeing it get day 2 is interesting. Top 32 also. Yeah, more Miraidon here to look at. Another Miraidon, obviously. This one playing the Tapu Koko EX. Definitely a card that some people experiment with at first. The paralysis isn't bad right now, though. But the one thing to take away with this Miraidon deck, there is no Iron Hands. Oh, wow. An Iron Hands Miraidon deck. Or an Iron Hands-less Miraidon deck, sorry. That's pretty interesting. Now, I'm not sure that that's a great idea, because I think Iron Hands is too good not to play. But I guess, like, there is debate for Koko, because you can use it against Gardevoir. You can, like, boss the EX, then Koko paralyze it, and then knock it out with a 2-shot. Maybe there's something to that. I guess Koko's also pretty good against Charizard, too, because Charizard doesn't really have many ways to get out of paralysis. There's another Mew. Another double turbo Mew, a bit more straightforward double turbo Mew with a bit more teched out supporters with the Turo and the one of Avery, which again, Avery does look like it could be good at Mew. I'll have to try it myself. Another Miraidon here playing the Iron Hands and a Drapion, so really teching for Mew, which is fine. There was a Lost Tina deck here, which, yeah, Lost Tina just being, well, again, just a very straightforward, powerful deck right now. There was a Fusion Mew, but there is no list available for that. Okay. Well, there was a Rapid Strike here, also to look at. Rapid Strike without Spiritomb, so probably had a bit of a harder time in the Mew matchup, which was obviously really popular in day 2 here. Another Fusion Mew with the Ice Cube, playing Roxanne and Avery, so that's interesting. And Vitality Band, and Trekking Shoe. There's a lot going on in this list, actually. There's a lot of interesting tech cards. The Roxanne's cool. I don't hate the idea of Roxanne and Mew. I think, honestly, Iono's just better because you can use it in the early game if you really have to. The amount of times I've Iono to just even find, like, double turbo power tablet to take a KO is really good. I think Iono's better than Roxanne, but I don't hate the idea of Roxanne still. Like, Roxanne is still a very strong supporter. Yeah, I don't hate it. It might be good into, like, Guardy compared to, like, Iono. I don't know. Roxanne's interesting. The Avery is interesting. Vitality Band's also pretty interesting. I guess Vitality Band power tablet is how you can knock out basic EXs. Because I still play Choice Belt in my Mew list. This build not playing Box of Disaster is interesting. But I guess when you have, like, Avery, maybe makes up for it. I'm not sure. Another Lost Tina with, yeah, just 4 switch card, actually. Only 4 switches and the 4 Gen Energy in this build, so that's interesting. See a Lost Zone deck, and it is the Lost Zone Dragonite Roy Moon Iron Hands deck. So not quite towards list, but kind of having some similar things about it. Not well, actually, maybe not really, honestly. It's not even that similar to Tor's deck, but it is playing the Roy Moon Iron Hands split with the Mirage Gates, which I think is good. I think actually this build of, like, Dragonite Moon with hands or, like, Raikou is actually not a bad deck. I think it's a little underexplored right now. I've seen a few of it in, like, online tourneys and stuff. I've even seen, like, a few people post on Twitter about, like, going to a League Cup and doing well with, like, a deck like this. But I definitely don't hate it. Dragonite's still, like, not a bad card overall. It just might not be as good into, like, stuff, obviously, like Iron Valiant would be pretty awkward because you don't want to, like, put damage on your own bench. But I don't hate it. I think Roy Moon and Iron Hands are just really good in Lost Zone. And there's definitely a lot of creative ways you can, play those two. A lot of Fusion Mew making day 2. It's kind of the story of these European regionals. There is another Snorlax control, because Snorlax is broken. 3 Miraidons in a row. I guess we'll quickly skim through these real quick, see what's up in them. Oh, there we go. It looks like we got the Turbo Miraidon deck from LAIC that my friend Anil playing the Peony, which is pretty cool. 17 lightning. Again, just very high odds to hit those generators. I think this deck is more of a one-trick pony deck where it probably just did really good at LAIC because nobody really knew what the heck it was. But now that it's been kind of revealed and stuff, I don't know if this is, like, the greatest way to play Miraidon. It does have some cool spice in it, though, and it does have a higher chance of getting double energy off generator, which is always a good thing, right? Like, when you're playing 13 energy, like, I've played the LAIC build, and I've had a lot of times where generator just whiffs because there's only 13 energy, and having 17 really makes it easy to get those turn 1 hands off. Another Miraidon playing 12 lightning. Wow, that's greedy. See, I don't know about that. Like, 12 lightning, that's not a lot of energy overall. It does have, like, rod and stuff, but still, 12 energy is pretty greedy. See another Lost Zone Giratina, because Tina's good. I mean, yeah, the Lost Tina decks are all, like, kind of the same. Again, we'll skim through most of these. Another Fusion Mew with the Deoxys. I'm not sure what matchup Deoxys is, like, best in over, like, Ice Cube, to be honest. I don't know. Yeah, another Miraidon looks like it's pretty similar to the LAC build. Well, it actually had a peony in it. I lied. Wait, was that just Turbo Miraidon? Am I just trolling? No, okay, it was normal Miraidon, but just had a one of peony in the deck. We see the Charizard deck again. This one does have Delphox and Rotom, so really splitting the difference between the two V Pokemon that you can play. The Rotom definitely, I think, is now going to be a potential staple in Pidgeysard, but we do see the Delphox also in the deck for that like snipe package that you get with it. Another Snorlax here with Pidgeot. Yeah, Pidgeot Snorlax. We've seen this in like online tourneys. It's definitely not terrible. I mean, being able to get any card out of your deck every turn is really good. This build does have a lot more technology. It is also playing Luxray V in the deck, which is also good. Removing Turo Scenario a lot of the time and Switch can win you the game, right? So just that's really good. Fang Snipe is a great counter to control people and lock them out. Pokestop and Mountain are interesting. I guess Mountain makes sense because you can grab Rotom or Luxray and counter Stadium to Path. And Pokestop, I mean, the deck plays a gajillion items, right? So there you go. It's got a lot of items. Another Guardy. Yeah, a lot of Guardy lists are pretty similar by now. I think we can skim through that, especially another Miraidon. Looks like it's the LEIC build. There was a Roaring Moon again. So 2 Roaring Moon in day 2. Not bad for the deck, considering this deck is falling off. And it is fairly similar to the other build, playing the Water Energy Turbo build with the Radiant Greninja, but it's playing the Cologne Cross Switchers, which you can pull off. I mean, you do need a lot to go your way to pull that off, but you can pull it off. If you get lucky enough with your Pokestops and your draws, it's very likely sometimes you can pull off the double Cross Switcher Cologne Greninja Energy Switch combo. It's possible. You need a lot of items, but when your hand is big, you can easily pull that off. And I guess it would help into like the Guardian Lasso matchup a bit more easier, because I think Roaring Moon's worst matchups definitely are stuff like Guardy, which can be tough, and when you have the Cologne and the Cross Switchers, you have an out to beating them a bit easier, right? So makes sense. Got more Guardy, because, yeah, Guardy's good. Again, we'll skim through a lot of the Guardy lists, because they're all kind of the same, right? Fusion Mew, once again. Playing Avery and Turo and Ice Cube. Yeah, I like that. Maybe if you're playing Ice Cube, maybe playing a 1 of Avery isn't terrible. Because it's like, again, it's like playing the Screamtail. Another Roaring Moon in day 2. This one does play the Greninja and the stuff, but not having the Water Energy. Does have the Ancient Booster Capsule, though, in the deck to try to give the Roaring Moon a little bit more HP. See, I'm not a fan of it in this deck because, like, it's hard to find it. I mean, sometimes you Pokestop it away, but there are going to be times where the Ancient Booster Capsule, if you're able to find it, can be very useful. Having the Morpekos can be good, too. The double Morpeko does help in the Guardy. Yeah, not bad. I mean, 3 Roaring Moon in day 2 is definitely interesting, considering, you know, a lot of people may have written the deck off. More Fusion Mew. Let's go through some of these decks real quick, because it's like Miraidon, Fusion Mew. We've kind of seen all the same. It is interesting to see what else did get day 2. Basically just Fusion Mew, Miraidon in a row here. That's crazy. Okay, we got a Meloetta build. Actually, ooh, I've seen this in an online tourney. So playing Jet Energy and 2 Meloetta is interesting. It's not playing Ice Cube, not playing Deoxys. It's just 2 copies of Meloetta. But also plays a Jet Energy. I'm not sure what the Jet Energy is really for. Like, I guess it's like an extra switch out. The deck does already play the double rope switch card, so playing a Super Rod too. Super Rod's not bad actually in Mew because it can help into Avery, which is a pretty popular card right now. So it's not terrible to have, I guess. There was another Lost Zone Radiant Zard deck with Roaring Moon and the Pidgeot V. See, I'm a fan of this deck. I think this deck is underrated, and the Pidgeot V is nice because you get to play the Forest Seal Stone, which the other build didn't get to play. And that does help because obviously this deck doesn't play Radiant Greninja. You don't have as much draw as normal Lost Zone decks do because you have to play Charizard instead of Greninja. So having the Forest Seal Stone Pidgeot can help in that regard, which is cool. More Miraidon. 18, yeah, so it's a Turbo Peony Miraidon build with 18 energy. And we see another Mew, another Grabber Mew Luxray build. And we see our first Chien-Pao. So yeah, Chien-Pao definitely has been on the decline recently. I mean, this is what the first Chien-Pao we're looking at here in day 2 of Gdańsk. That's crazy. So yeah, Chien-Pao's been proven that it's maybe not as good as we all thought it was. It's falling off a little bit, though I think the deck is still, like, good. I don't think it's a bad deck by any means. Like, maybe it's still in the top 10 best decks in the format. It's not a bad deck. I mean, again, if it sets up and everything, like, if this deck draws hot, it's really good. It's arguably BDIF, right? But other than that, it definitely does have weaknesses. This build is playing a split of, like, Iron Hands plus the Cologne play with Greninja, which I don't hate. I mean, you're just capitalizing on just taking, like, 2 prizes a lot of the time. So I really don't hate this build of Chien-Pao hands at all. I don't hate it. We got a Cloth in day 2. That's exciting to see. Cloth's definitely a meme, but honestly, with like the popularity of like Charizard, it might not be bad. And I guess the Snorlax matchup's not bad either. Would it be bad actually? I don't know. I don't know if Cloth can beat Snorlax. This build does have a lot going on. It's playing a lot of interesting one-of supporters like the Grant, which is fine. You got the Roxanne and the Avery. So that's interesting. But yeah, seeing Cloth get day 2 is pretty cool. This is definitely a really, really interesting archetype in our meta. I don't think it's bad. And again, with the popularity of stuff like Charizard and Miraidon, it's not the worst deck you can play. Though it does seem to have a pretty abysmal Guardy matchup, which is maybe the issue with it. And also it has a bad Mew matchup, which, speaking of Mew, there it is. Another Roy Moon in day 2. Looks like it's similar to the build we looked at earlier with the Cologne. Yeah, a couple Roy Moons in day 2 is interesting. Again, not the worst deck ever. It's just because it's not getting like top 8 placements doesn't mean it's bad. Another Radiant Zard Lost Zone deck. Not opting for Roaring Moon, just strictly sticking to the one prize attackers with no Roaring Moon, which I don't hate. Not having Roaring Moon. You know, Roaring Moon is still good in my opinion in the deck, but yeah, not having Moon can be fine. I think now with like the popularity of stuff like Mew, it's probably still correct to now play Moon, or at least maybe like Galarian Moltres, or just some kind of answer to that. I guess you could play Drapion too, which I guess wouldn't be terrible. More of the Pidgeysard deck. Ooh, whoops. Pidgeysard with the Entei in the deck. Still fine. Still like it, obviously. More Miraidon. Yeah, we'll skim through quite a few of these because there's another Roaring Moon to look at. This one is the Water Energy build, playing a couple Ancient Booster Capsules, once again to give the Moon a little bit of tank potential, which, again, I don't hate. It's not bad. A lot of Roaring Moon in day 2, which is really interesting. There's quite a few I can see. Another Guardy. Yeah, we'll go through some of these real quick because, yeah, it's just got double Turbo Mew, couple Miraidons here. Look through these real quick. And all right, moving on. Now we got another Roaring Moon. So yeah, the Roaring Moon lists are interesting. More Roaring Moon in day 2 than I would have expected. And this one, obviously, once again, playing Greninja Water Energy. Yeah, we'll have to see if Roaring Moon does as good in like San Antonio, because there's actually a lot more in day 2 than I would have thought there would have been. With Miraidon, which I guess maybe Moon beats Miraidon. Does Moon beat Miraidon? I don't even know. Tina. Now this is an interesting Tina list. It's got Raihan, Boss, Avery, and Roxanne. A lot of supporters in the deck. Really interesting build. Avery and Tina's not terrible, especially when you have Sableye. But, like, it's tough because when, I guess, like, it just forces your opponent to make sure they still have the Manaphy and Jirachi in play, and that can get awkward for them, especially when you're KOing the active as easily with Giratina. So maybe it's not terrible. Another Rapid Strike deck here. Rapid Strike having a pretty breakthrough kind of term in here, I think, for sure. Another Miraidon. More Lost Tina. Yeah, it's more standardized list. Another Charizard. Ooh, playing that 1/1 Toedscruel, trying to tech for the Chien-Pao. Honestly, the Toedscruel is cool, but I think now it's kind of just been written off as you don't need it, especially with Chien-Pao's huge decline in popularity. I mean, bro, we've seen one Chien-Pao in day 2, so I'm sure the Toedscruel probably didn't come up as much as this Charizard player would have liked. It's still not terrible. If Chien-Pao ends up becoming super popular, it's not a bad card to run, but right now, Chien-Pao is not popular enough. I guess shutting off Pokestop, though, can be pretty relevant overall. We got another Lost Zone variant here. Just a very straightforward standard Lost Zone deck with a Dragonite V in the deck. So this is an interesting archetype, or archetype take on the deck. Playing Path in the deck is interesting. That's not a card you usually see in the normal Lost Zone variants. And playing Roxanne, Raihans, Claras, TM Devo. It's kind of like splitting the difference between like Charizard and normal Lost Zone, I find. Path isn't a bad idea. I don't hate the idea of Path and Lost Zone. I mean, it's good in Giratina for a reason, right? And originally, Lost Zone Charizard decks originally used to play that. It's not a bad idea. I don't hate it. It's a cool take on Lost Zone. There's definitely a lot you can do with Lost Zone, right? Like, there's a lot. We see a Lost Zone Charizard in day 2. So, one of the forgotten ways to play Charizard EX, obviously, is this Lost Zone variant, because it's just a little clunky. Sometimes you're not able to consistently get Charizard. You don't have access to Pidgeot. Though you might have a better matchup in a Gardevoir when you're playing the Lost Zone variant, right? Because you have Sableye, you have Cramorant. You can even use Radiant Greninja sometimes if they don't match Manaphy, or you're able to KO Manaphy. One thing I like about this list is it plays Lost City, which does allow you to like KO the Jirachi and then use Sableye the following turn. So there are some merits to doing that, I guess. So I don't hate it. Definitely not a terrible deck whatsoever. Maybe not as good as it could be or is right now, but underrated for sure. Another Fusion Mew. Got another Charizard, playing a Mawile and Delphox V. So having two interesting techs in the Charizard deck. Mawile I definitely think is falling off a little bit because people are now playing Turos in their Zard and Guardies, but it's not terrible. Some people just don't have it and they don't respect it, especially in a best of one where it can cheese you a win for sure. There's an Arc Pile in day 2, and it is Arctina. So I think Arctina definitely is... It's mid. I think it does struggle against some of the top decks, but it doesn't seem bad into, like, the Charizard matchup. I think it actually has a pretty good Charizard matchup, because you're playing Judge Path, and you have a Grass Attacker, which are all pretty good. This build does have quite a few things. It's only playing a 1/1 Tina, but also having a 1/1 Superior. With the popularity of Charizard, I really don't hate that. The Drapion obviously will help against Mew. I feel like nowadays, yeah, you'll have to play the Tomb. But the question is, does this beat Control? So the way you have to beat Control is, I guess you have Shred, which probably just gets the job done, right? You just have Shred. You have Charon's Care. I wonder if maybe you have to play Turo instead, because he'll trap your Bibarel. But you do have Skwovet, right? You do at least have Skwovet. And I guess with Shred, you're just kind of chilling. You have 2 Switch, And you have the shred option. Yeah, I don't hate that, actually. I don't hate it. Definitely an interesting list. I'm a fan of Arc Piles. I always like when Arceus does well. So I'm glad at least one got day 2. A Lost Zone Roaring Moon deck did well. And this one's actually just a committed Lost Zone Roaring Moon. It's not just playing 1 moon. It's playing 3 Roaring Moon. So really committing to the Lost Zone Roaring Moon engine. I don't hate it. I mean, it is one way to build up the Roaring Moon, right? It's not terrible. You do get the Lost Zone package with it. 3 is definitely a little, not overkill, but I'm not sure you need 3 when you have, like, Rod, but definitely not terrible because it just means you just have higher odds of finding the Roaring Moon. I actually don't hate it, man. I mean, honestly, you get Sableye and Crayon, which is a pretty good trade-off, and you have the Radiant Greninja still as an attacker also. So I don't hate that, actually. I actually don't hate a more committed Lost Zone Moon deck. Got another Snorlax here. Go through that real quick. Another Entei Valiant playing that one of Moltres. So yeah, Entei Valiant still doing good. Moltres isn't bad either. I guess it does help into control, right? That's one matchup you'd probably want to play it for. More Charizard here. Another Delphox build. Yeah, we'll just go through that real quick. Another Snorlax. Yeah, we're almost done here in the day 2 of Gdańsk. So let's quickly skim through these real quick. Or we'll see. We'll look at the last deck we'll look at here is just the Roaring Moon deck because it's probably all the same list at the bottom there. But yeah, there was Roaring Moon in day 2. A lot more Roaring Moon than I thought there would be. Obviously, there was like the few Lost Zone builds that we looked at, but then there's also just the straightforward turbo Roaring Moon decks in day 2. Interesting to see the deck still perform this well. Again, it's not the worst deck. It's flopping, but I don't think it's really the worst deck you can play right now. And I guess that's all the day 2 decks. I mean, we can look at these, but they're probably just like the more standardized list. But now we can go to Brisbane. Now, Brisbane was a bit smaller, but wait until you see what got day 2, man. So we've already looked at the top 8. Outside the top 8, we do have a Miraidon. So 2 Miraidons bubbled out of top 8 in both Brisbane and Gdańsk, which is pretty interesting to see. There was an Entei Valiant deck here also outside of the top 8. So, yeah, there you go. Entei Valiant and Miraidon almost still getting top 8 in these regionals after their pretty good performance at LEIC. We got Tina. We'll try to skim through some of these decks, too, because they're probably all very similar. There is another Turbo Miraidon deck playing the 17 Light Energy with the Peony. Playing a Drapion over Spiritomb is interesting. I mean, I guess both are probably fine to play. I guess Drapion, you still have, like, the benefit of it just, you know, being better because you don't want to Spiritomb your own Raikou and Lumineon, especially when that deck's crutch is down to like the outs to being able to draw cards. So the deck doesn't have like a good draw engine. Double Turbo Mew with Oricorio. I wonder if Oricorio would be worth it. I guess it does help a little bit. I guess would it help a little bit? I don't know if it'd be good against Guardy though, because it lets them go like 1, 2, 3, like because they can still reversal energy 330 damage your Mew anyways, right? So I don't know. Oricorio's okay, I guess. I don't know what other matchups might help in. Maybe it'll help against Entei Valiant. I don't know. Maybe, probably not, though. There is another Pidgeysard here. Pidgeysard just had a pretty good performance. Or, well, it was Pidgeot Bibarelzard. Whoa, I didn't even see that. Honestly, don't hate that. Explain the difference between the two. Because obviously, like, if you're playing against Guardy, they'll, like, countercatcher, Iono, kill your Pidgeot, and then you're just like, oh, shoot, I got nothing left to do. Rip, I'm bricking. I have to sack like a boss or something. But when you have Bibarel and Pidgeot, it just makes you more proof to getting bodied by, like, Ionos and stuff. Another Cloth deck. Yeah, 2 Cloths today. Let's go. This Cloth deck did get top 16, so that's pretty impressive. Cloth ain't a meme, baby. It's definitely cool when you're in a field full of Charizard. It's not a bad deck at all. I really like Cloth. I like that it's doing well. It's definitely a meme and more of a niche deck, but it's cool to see that we got 17. It did get top 16. I lied. All right, I miscounted. It didn't get top 16. It bubbled out of top 16, which is depressing. A couple of Rapid Strikes here to look at. We see the Sableyes there getting top 32. And more Tina to look at. Ooh, the Ditto in the Tina deck. So kind of acting as that like 5th Comfy. And sometimes an extra Tina. Because this deck does play 4 Giratinas. Really trying to get a Giratina and play turn 1. Fair enough. Yeah, Guardy, Miraidon. Yeah, we'll just quickly go through some of these decks. Was that the Turbo build? Yeah, it was not the Turbo build. I saw 2 Iron Hands. I thought it was like the Turbo build for a sec. Another Valiant Entei deck. Another Tina. So there's our first Chien-Pao here to look at in day 2. Yeah, Chien-Pao really just having an underperformance this last weekend in these 2 regionals. But the deck's still not terrible. I just think, honestly, it just kind of falters to a lot of the big decks right now. It seems like its matchup spread is just not the greatest, which is a problem. Another Lost Zone Charizard. Now, this is spicy. What the heck, bro? There's a Groudon. So the idea behind Groudon, I guess we'll quickly read it here. So the Groudon does kind of make sense as a cool tech card. It's actually a way you can knock out Iron Hands, right? It does Magma Purge, does 60 damage, discard up to 4 energy from your Pokemon, doing 60 for each card discard in this way. So the idea behind this is obviously it knocks out Iron Hands, but it also can do 240. So there are instances where you need to do 240 damage to KO a basic EX Pokemon, like Miraidon or Raikou or Chien-Pao even, or Roaring Moon, I guess in this stand. And yeah, that can help in that. So it's kind of like a jack of all trades. It helps against Roaring Moon, and it can also one-shot V Pokemon. That's really cool. I like to see the technology. Yardakuno 2 allows Cram to do 120 to Crest, which is also very good. Look at the Lugia deck here. It was a Lugia Iron Hands Vessel deck. So yeah, Lugia is another deck that has fallen off pretty hard. I think Lugia is just kind of mid right now. I've tried it a bit myself. It does seem a little underwhelming. I'm surprised that there was only the one Lugia deck we've looked at in these two tournaments. I don't think the deck's like dead or anything. I think if you hit the right matchups and you draw hot enough, I think Lugia is still just an insane deck right now. Maybe if Lost Zone variants get a little bit more popular, we'll see Lugia return, but it just feels like Lugia is just kind of mid right now. Not the worst deck ever, but also I guess like Miraidon's popularity kind of scares me a little bit from want to play Lugia. Another Lost Zone Charizard deck we can look at. It was the Lost Zone Roaring Moon deck, playing the Hawlucha in the deck and the Spiritomb, which does help a lot against Mew. When you have Roaring Moon and Spiritomb against Mew, you're probably chilling, as long as you just don't like brick really hard. Then the Hawlucha is pretty cool too for the Sableye. Yeah, not bad at all. I definitely like the list. We got another Lugia here, and it was Single Strike. So I heard rumors that there was a Single Strike deck in a day 2, and I think Single Strike Lugia is actually not that bad right now. Maybe a little underexplored. So you still have big blow-up attackers like T-Tar. You can still trade nicely into these 2-prize wars, and you have Stonejourner, which is a good single prizer, and Lugia should be okay against Guardy if you're playing Manaphy. I think playing Lugia, like, it's weird to say, but Lugia might have to start playing Manaphy now because Guardy just beats you with Screamtail. They'll Screamtail your Archeops, and then it's just game over, obviously. But I guess to counteract that, you can try to like KO the Gardevoir EX on the turn they Screamtail, but if they Screamtail both your Archeops, it's just game over, because then you're not getting energy into play. That's the ultimate issue. I think Lugia literally has to play Manaphy now. Like, there is no way around it. You have to play Manaphy and Lugia now, I think, going forward, because Screamtail. Because I don't know how you beat Screamtail. Like, the Screamtail just bodies you. But Single Strike Lugia, I actually don't think is bad. You have good type coverage, good one-prize attackers. You win pretty nicely into the 2-prize trade. I actually just don't hate Lugia right now. I think it's good. And maybe if you're playing Lugia, I don't know if you would play Cobalion anymore. Maybe just at that point take the Eldazard. But I definitely don't hate Lugia. We do see another Cloth in day 2. You'll love to see it, man. Cloth is just awesome. And here's the big one, folks. It's in the thumbnail. Mewtwo Union got day 2 at Brisbane. Now, keep in mind, Brisbane was a smaller regional, so there wasn't as many players. So a deck like this could do a little bit better, but this is really cool to see. Now, I actually did a video on Mewtwo Union Zatu last week. Now, it was not... Yeah, it was an ARC build. It wasn't playing the Snorlax and stuff. I have seen this build specifically from, like, Pokeka Book and stuff. But you know what? You love to see it. We haven't seen a Mewtwo Union in day 2 in a long time, and to see a Zatu Mewtwo deck in day 2 is awesome. Obviously, unfortunately, it didn't do the best in day 2. As you see, it's, like, at the very bottom of day 2. But it is really cool to see it get day 2 anyways. The fact that it got day 2 in the first place. You still have to get a good record to get day 2. It's not like you can just magically get day 2 at a small tournament. You still have to do well. And the deck did well enough for this player to get day 2, and that is awesome to see. This deck is spicy. I mean, Snorlax isn't a bad attacker, and then obviously the Mewtwo Union can be pretty good right now. The big silver lining, big L lining thing is like, yeah, Mewtwo gets farmed by Charizard and Roaring Moon, which seems to be kind of popular right now in the Lost Zone and even the Turbo build. Though this Turbo Roaring Moon wasn't played at all in Brisbane day 2, but interesting to see. That's awesome, and that's why I want to look at the day 2 decks. I wanted to see what spicy decks got day 2, what people were playing, and we do see that Roaring Moon is still doing well in either Lost Zone versions or in the Turbo build, which there's a lot of Turbo Roaring Moon in Gdańsk. So we'll have to see if these results will impact the future of the tournaments with San Antonio coming up on the horizon. We'll have to see if any of these decks impact it. Like, with Roaring Moon actually having an okay showing at Gdańsk, I'm curious to see if more people will be attached to Roaring Moon. I guess we'll have to see also with, like, the online tourney results, which maybe I'm due for an online tourney result video, looking at online tourney results video very, very soon. For sure. But yeah, interesting stuff. I'm excited to see where the meta goes into San Antonio, and I definitely wanted to kind of look at all the decks in day 2 to see what decks are popular. A lot of Mew and Gdańsk. I don't know how popular Mew will be in San Antonio because like Europe really likes their Mew decks, and I guess their control decks too. So we'll have to see on that. But hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like. I'll leave a link down below to Limitless so you can go check out the list yourself if you want to build any of these decks yourself and test them, especially if you're going to San Antonio or you got to like a cup this weekend or challenge or something. But thanks for watching, and bye-bye.